ESPN was in the building. The stars, the celebrities, everyone was in the building, and Ja Morant was not playing. So the night felt like it was going in a downward direction. But I'm going to tell you why. The Grizzlies matchup against the Brooklyn Nets turned out better than you could have even imagined, even though the best player on the Grizzlies did not play. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Michael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, covering the Memphis Grizzlies. And in my short tenure, I've been here for about 3-4 months now. I got here at the end of December. In my short tenure covering this team as the beat writer at the Commercial Appeal, this game against the Brooklyn Nets was probably the best game from just an anticipation perspective, and the follow through was the best game that I've seen the Grizzlies be a part of in that period of time. It was electric, it was wild, and it was one of those performances. But I am your host, DeMichael Cole, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Grizzlies anywhere you can get your podcast, whether that's Stitcher, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Locked On Grizzlies is everywhere. So let's talk about this Grizzlies game, this big win against the Brooklyn Nets. The game was all over the place. The Grizzlies come out in the first quarter. No Ja Morant, as we said. So Tyus Jones gets the start, and we hear all the talk going into the game. Wow, the Grizzlies are 14-2 without Ja Morant. But there was also the other side of that. I even heard people at the game talking about it, which was surprising to me, saying, 10 of those wins were against sub 500 teams. And even a couple of those wins, like when they played Miami was missing star players. When they played Dallas was missing Luka Doncic. So that's what 12 of the 14 wins right there, that you basically say you beat teams who were missing stars. You beat teams who just aren't that good. What can we take away from this besides the fact that the Grizzlies are good without Ja Morant? But how good? Well, this was the test. This game, this was the Nets. This was a road game for the Nets, meaning Kyrie Irving was playing, Kevin Durant was playing, and they cut up. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving cut up in this game, and it still did not matter. You just couldn't ask for a better showing than that. Kyrie Irving, 43 points. Kevin Durant, 35 points. Usually when that happens, it's curtains for the opponents. But even in a game where Ja Morant didn't play, the Grizzlies still persevered. I'm going to tell you how it happened, because it's one of those things. You look at the stats. I mean, the Nets had a better shooting percentage. Kevin Durant was cooking. Kyrie Irving was cooking. No one on the Grizzlies scored more than 23 points, even though they had a very balanced performance. So you look at the stat sheet, just the raw numbers, and you'd be like, wow, the Grizzlies actually won this game by 12 points. They won this game 132-120. How'd they win this game by 12 points? Well, the first reason is no Ja Morant, and they had contributions from Desmond Bane, DeAnthony Melton, Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, Steven Adams, Jaren Jackson Jr., everyone chipped in. The biggest performances, of course, were DeAnthony Melton. I mean, he came out cooking. He carried over that performance he had against the Rockets, and he came out shooting the ball really well. DeAnthony Melton was hot. I think he had 12 points in the first quarter, and they all were electrifying points. 3 3-pointers. He came out, made his first 3 threes. When he let a fourth one go in that first quarter too. And man, I mean, the building was just in anticipation, just knowing that he'd hit that shot, but he missed that one. And then he comes down the court and delivers probably his most exciting play of the game. He dunked on James Johnson, 6'8" forward for the Brooklyn Nets. And how it happened was DeAnthony Melton was ahead of the pack, and Brandon Clark throws the pass. He advances the pass to him. And James James Johnson is chasing down DeAnthony Melton. So Melton looks over his shoulder. He sees James Johnson right over his shoulder. And when he sees him, he goes up for the dunk. Of course, as James Johnson's going for the chase down block. And when he goes up for the dunk, he goes up with two hands. Then he switches with his left hand at the last second, gets the and one dunk. He dunks on him, gets hit in the face. Melton told us after the game, he said, I didn't even see the ball go in because he got hit in the face. And it was an and one. He falls on the floor and he's yelling, celebrating. And Melton's 23 points were big. He had 20 in the first half. And I thought it was interesting to see how he carried the team in the first half. Then in the second half, Desmond Bane dropped 3 after 3 after 3. I think he made 6 threes total. But those two guys, and then Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks chipped in another 21. He shot 7 of 21 now, but he was guarding, a lot of Kevin Durant, a lot of Kyrie Irving. And you can just see Dillon Brooks' presence being felt. But even more than that, Brandon Clark, Steven Adams, he had a negative plus minus in this game, 7 points, 11 rebounds. Still think he out-physicaled Andre Drummond, which was a big, factor coming into this game. Steven Adams won that matchup, I think, one-on-one. But Brandon Clark came in this game, 14 points, 10 rebounds. So he got a double-double. But his activity was so noticeable just around the rim, offensive rebounds, tip backs, tipping the ball. Brandon Clark came in, and he played the beginning of the fourth quarter, and he did not come out the game. Brandon Clark closed the game alongside Jaren Jackson, who did what he does. He had 4 blocks, 13 points. It was an all-around performance for the Grizzlies. Exactly what you would expect for a team that's trying to prove a point on a national level, because ESPN was in the building. Someone told me at the game that ESPN had 70 to 75 people in attendance, from production, from talent, from all around, 70 to 75 people. They said they basically, had a takeover at the Peabody Hotel. But I mean, this is what you wanted to see from the Grizzlies, right? No Ja Morant. A typical Grizzlies fans knows what Desmond Bane can do, knows what Brandon Clark can do, knows what Kyle Anderson and the rest of this group can bring to the game. But from a national perspective, they didn't know that Desmond Bane was this good. They knew about the three-point shooting. They didn't know he could take over a fourth quarter like that. They didn't know Brandon Clark could close the game the way he did. And they probably didn't know, just DeAnthony Melton, 23 points. They didn't know DeAnthony Melton could shoot the ball like that. It was an all-around performance. And I think one of the biggest things was they weathered the storm. They weathered the storm. The Grizzlies shot off in the first half. 76-62 lead at halftime, and you're thinking the Nets can't stop them. This game is really much in control at this point. But the Nets have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Those two were cooking in the first half as well. Don't get me wrong. They were shooting off in the first half, but what they did in that third quarter was special. I just remember one shot. Kyrie Irving was hot, Kevin Durant hot, and they both were just taking turns. One shot, Kyrie Irving was pinned up in the corner, and he had Brandon Clark on him, so a much taller, much bigger defender all around. And Brandon Clark has him hemmed up. So Kyrie Irving, of course, has the ball low to the ground where Brandon Clark just can't reach it. And he just jab steps, does one little quick jab step. Once he does that jab step, he just rises up, shoots it over Brandon Clark, corner three-pointer, pure net. And I looked at the people around, and I said, what more can you do? He's 6'8". He's big. So it's not like Kyrie moved him out of the way. It was just a quick jab step, and you have to respect the quickness. And that's all he needed. All he needed was Brandon Clark to get on his heels for half a second. It wasn't even that long. And that half a second was enough time for him to rise up, shoot it just over the outreached arms of Brandon Clark. Pure net. Kevin Durant, same thing. Had Dillon Brooks on him a lot of the night, shoots over the top of Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks was very physical, but he shoots over the top of him. Easy. Had Kyle Anderson, who I think is a really physical defender, has really good hands. He brings, a little bit more size in terms of height to the table. shot over the top of him, used the shiftiness a little bit more. He kind of did, a couple hesitation dribbles on one possession and pulled up over Kyle Anderson, and it drew some oohs and ahs from the FedEx Forum crowd. And I thought it was interesting to see on his way back up the court, Kevin Durant. He was talking to Kendrick Perkins and T. Morant, Ja Morant's father, throughout the game a little bit. But after he made that shot, he goes back up the court, he's jogging, and he reaches his hand out to T. Morant, Ja Morant's father. T did not shake his hand back, but that was Kevin Durant, letting him know he was hot. But the Grizzlies weathered that third quarter storm. And in that fourth quarter, took over. While the Nets scored 42 points in that third quarter, held them to only 16 points in the fourth. Completely shut them down. Taylor Jenkins said that the team switched some defensive coverages. I know that Dylan Brooks said that he felt like, they started blitzing Kevin Durant a little bit too early in this game. So Taylor Jenkins switched some coverage things around, and that was all she wrote. They held him to 16 points in the fourth, took control, and the Grizzlies, a convincing win. I mean, a 12-point win in a game where Kyrie Irving scores 43 points and Kevin Durant scores 35 points. You just don't see that a lot, especially with a guy like Ja Morant out. But as amazing as that game was, I want to tell you about something that'll help you save an amazingly amount of money, and that's Truebill. See, with Truebill, I'm sure you've heard about these free trials out here. Free trials where you end up, renewing without consent, and you check your bank account, and it's already taking money out of your account because of a free trial that you selected 2 months ago or a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Look, I know it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you. That's because these businesses, they're out to get you. So don't let these corporations take your money. So download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. See, Truebill is going to help you stop paying for subscriptions because you don't need these subscriptions that you're not paying for or you tend to forget about. Truebill will be on top of that for you. And in fact, people save on average about $720 a year with Truebill. And actually, even more so with the numbers, Truebill has more than 2 million customers. And between those 2 million customers, they have saved more than $100 million. So don't fall for those subscription shams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. So go right now. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. It can save you thousands a year. Another way to make some money, you don't have to save too much on this. You can just go out and be aggressive out there, and that's NBA Top Shot. See, NBA Top Shot is the officially licensed NFT partner for the NBA, and this is the future. This is where the future of NBA fandom looks like. We're talking trading cards, fantasy sports, airline loyalty programs that'll get you shipped out to some games, and more. Michael Jordan is an investor. Will Smith is an investor. Kevin Durant is an investor. Sign up today and get yourself a starter pack so you can pull an NFT or a superstar. You can get you a superstar pack with a guy like Kevin Durant, Ja Morant, and LeBron James, or you can get you a star rookie pack with a guy like Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green for just $9. So you go to NBA Top Shot to make that happen. But coming up, we're going to talk to you about Desmond Bane and the history he made in this game. So Desmond Bane, the three-point shooting king of Memphis. He is officially the three-point shooting king of Memphis, Tennessee. He passed Mike Miller for the single-season three-point record. And it was an amazing moment because it happened in the fourth quarter. It happened when the Grizzlies were making their comeback, and Desmond Bane was the main reason they were making that comeback. 23 points, 6 3-pointers. He needed 5 to break the record, so he added 1 on for good measure. But Desmond Bane had it cooking, and you could tell, this was special to him. You could tell how special it was. So let me tell you what we saw. After the game, well, let's talk about what everyone saw before we get to what we saw. I, After the game, he had his interview with Malika Andrews at ESPN, and the entire Grizzlies team goes over there and they charge at Desmond Bane, and they're all, and that's just, we've seen that a lot of times watching the Grizzlies, but I think just nationally they have not seen that. That showed how close this team is, just the tight knit of the group, where Desmond Bane is having this one-off interview, and you see Ja Morant come into the camera, and even Steven Adams got in there, and Jared Culver, and there's a bunch of different guys. They all were involved, but it was a big day for Desmond Bane. So he walks in his post-game press conference after the game, and he's holding a basketball with two arms wrapped around it like it's a baby, and it was his baby. I mean, it was a special thing for just a second-year player. So he broke the single-season three-point record previously held by Mike Miller. So I asked him after the game, I said, what are you going to do with the ball? And he said that he's going to put it up, but before he puts the ball up, he wants Mike Miller. He said he has a relationship. He knows some of Mike Miller's people. He's going to try to get it to Mike Miller, get Mike Miller to sign it. Then he's going to sign it himself, put the number on there, the three-pointers he made, the single-season record, and he's going to put it up. So big shout-out to Desmond Bane for breaking that record. It's been fun just covering him in this little time that I've been here. And just one thing that stood out to me, as I've said before, is, in his hometown in Richmond, Indiana, Desmond Bane is looked at as a hero. They really talk him up out there. I've even talked to some people down at TCU who talked about him as a program changer, the winning mentality that he brought there. And we saw, just last week, TCU was in a really big game against Arizona in the NCAA tournament and almost pulled off an upset. And a lot of those guys on that team were Desmond Bane's teammates. So, his winning ways rub off, and you're starting to see that. He came to this Grizzlies team. You see the winning impact that he has on these games. He had the highest plus minus for the Grizzlies in this game against the Nets. He not only spaces the floor, but Desmond Bane, when Tyus Jones goes out, Desmond Bane has been the primary ball handler. A lot of people have not paid attention to that. When Ja Morant doesn't play, Tyus Jones gets to start, which means someone else. The Grizzlies don't have another point guard on the roster. That guy has been Desmond Bane. He steps up. He does the pick and roll. He sometimes, dribbles into those three-point shots. But big shout out to Desmond Bane for what he has done as a three-point shooter. He made 6 in this game against the Nets. And the Grizzlies needed each and every one of them during that fourth quarter run. And then he added on another for good measure eventually. But I think this just goes to show, one, how the league is changing, but two, the depth of the Grizzlies. Desmond Bane, he's efficient. He gets his work done. But nationally, a game like this is going to help him get that attention that he deserves. And we talk about after the game when Desmond Bane was getting mobbed by his teammates, and in that situation he said something noteworthy to me, and he said, "We here." So he was asked about that in post game. Did you say "we here"? And Desmond Bane said, "Yeah, the Grizzlies are here." And he said that the Grizzlies, they don't have to fight for that respect anymore. And he's right. Everyone saw this game, and we talked about it. You said, oh, what would have been a best-case scenario? The best-case scenario probably would have been Ja Morant playing and a game playing out similarly to this. The next best-case scenario, and some people would say this was even a better case scenario, was Ja Morant not playing, getting rest, and the Grizzlies still winning convincingly while having all of these players step up, like Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Kyle Anderson, and so forth, just to show how deep this team is. Because a lot of people see Ja Morant. I mean, they see Ja Morant highlights every game, even in games where he probably struggles somewhat, but he has a big dunk. His dunk is going to be all over SportsCenter. And, Desmond Bane's 28 points or, Tyus Jones 10 assists off the bench, or whatever the case may be. Steven Adams 16 rebounds. All of those things will get overlooked. Nothing got overlooked in that game last night. Nothing got overlooked. So it was a special night for Memphis. It was a special night, with the Grizzlies picking up their 50th win. I believe that's the 5th in franchise history. So this next gen Grizz team, just added another 50 win, 50 wins to the history of this franchise, the short history of this franchise, that is. And Desmond Bane is a big reason why. He's a winner. He's a big time player, and he's a good guy to put your money on when you make these bets, because I believe, and then going into this game, he was propped at 2.5 threes, ended up making 6, so easy money. But since we're talking about bets, let's talk about BetOnline.net. See, Thursday is a big day because you got college basketball back, and then you got your NBA games. But not only that, you can use BetOnline.net and you can go bet boxing. You can go bet hockey. You can go bet MMA. You can go bet anywhere. That's BetOnline.net. Go place your bets, because Thursday is going to be jam-packed with action. It's going to be a lot going on. And MLB is right around the corner as well. So you got that. But you got the Pacers and Grizzlies game, we'll get to shortly. You got the Suns and the Nuggets. Suns on the second night of a back-to-back against a Nuggets team. That game will be interesting. You get a look at the Bucks against the Wizards. The Bucks are the Grizzlies' opponent on Saturday. You might get a look at them. But BetOnline has some interesting numbers, some interesting odds for each of those games. So you can go to BetOnline, go check those out, and then go check out those 4 games that'll be on for March Madness, because BetOnline will have you covered, and they'll have the good props, they'll have the good bets, the money lines, or whether you want to bet the over, bet the under. BetOnline.net is the place to go. Coming up now, we're going to talk about the Pacers game on tomorrow night. So the Pacers are next up on the schedule, and this is an interesting game. This is more interesting game than people will give it credit for, because the first factor that we need to touch on is Ja Morant. We haven't talked much about Ja Morant besides the fact that he missed that Brooklyn Nets game, but Ja Morant was listed as out pretty early. And Taylor Jenkins before the game said some interesting things to us, which may cause some concerns to some fans. He said that, look, there is no strong indication of where Ja Morant is right now. And I'm paraphrasing here. These aren't his exact words, by the way, but they're pretty close. He basically said that the Grizzlies will get an MRI on Thursday. Today, they'll get an MRI, and the MRI will tell them where Ja Morant is. He knows it's knee soreness. He talks about, Ja Morant having knee soreness. That's what they know. They don't know how severe. They don't know. And Taylor Jenkins doesn't sound too concerned, but that answer gave off more than you may have expected. It wasn't just, oh, it's knee soreness, we're resting him up, he should be ready to go in X amount of days. Taylor Jenkins has said that sometimes. This wasn't one of those cases. This was more so of, I felt like what we got from Taylor Jenkins was the Grizzlies are in a wait and see approach. So with that being said, I think it's safe to say Ja Morant's probably not going to play against the Pacers. How long will he be out? Sounds like we'll get an update today, or we'll get an update after the game, and we'll have you covered with that on Locked On Grizzlies. So the update will be coming, but Ja Morant is the number one thing there, and it looks like he's unlikely to play in this game against the Pacers. So what's next? Now you're talking a back-to-back. Tyus Jones will get the start at point guard again. Dillon Brooks, he talked about after the game against the Nets, he talked about getting his conditioning up. This is going to be a test for him. It's the second night of a back-to-back. I believe this is his first back-to-back since he's returned. So this is going to really test his conditioning out. And the Grizzlies had 4 starters play more than 30 minutes. So a lot of those back-to-backs, we've seen the Grizzlies blow out some opponents on the first end of the back-to-back, like in the last one, and they were able to get some rest. Now, it didn't work out in their favor the last time because the second leg of that back-to-back was against the Houston Rockets, and it ended up being one of Memphis's worst losses this season. Well, second leg of this back-to-back is against one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, and that's the Pacers. But the Grizzlies beat this team just about 2 weeks ago, March 15th. Blowed out the Pacers. 135-102 win in Indiana. It was another game that was actually without Ja Morant. So the same starting lineup that'll probably play today will be the same starting lineup that played in that game on March 15th. I believe that was Dylan Brooks' second game back. So obviously still working his way back. But those back-to-backs are tricky. I mean, we've seen the Grizzlies not shoot well in some of these back-to-backs, and they're open about it. Seen Ja Morant straight up say sometimes he didn't have his legs. And, I mean, I think back to a Dallas game earlier this season where they played the Mavericks, and the players just like, look, we just didn't have it tonight. That's happened. This game against the Pacers, it's an important one. The Grizzlies right now, they are taking firm control. They're taking firm control of that 2 seed in the Western Conference, for one. They are now up 2 full games over the Golden State Warriors. And even with Golden State, pulling out a shocking victory last night over Miami without some of their top players even making that trip to Miami, the Grizzlies are still in a pretty good position. But this game right here, this is going to be a test. Malcolm Brogdon has been in and out of the lineup for the Pacers. So he may play, he may not play. But outside of Malcolm Brogdon, you have Tyrese Halliburton. You have Buddy Hield. They have talent. There is no denying the talent that this team has. But this will be an interesting game. This will be an interesting game for the Grizzlies. We'll see how the Grizzlies perform in this setting, because there's the letdown factor too. We haven't talked about that much. And I just watching the Grizzlies over the past 4 months, I'll say that I haven't gotten any indications of this team being that type of team. What's the type of team that I feel like are prone to letdowns? More veteran teams who've proven their worth, so to speak, who feel like they can go out and have a couple off nights and still cruise to a win and things like that. This team is young and hungry. I mean, keep in mind, before ESPN basically laid out a red carpet and gave them something that hasn't happened in 4 years, this team felt underrated by the masses. It took ESPN doing something historic for them to say, okay, maybe these people do respect us. So, and they played with that same approach. That's the way the Grizzlies play when they take the floor. So keep that in mind. And we thank you for making, Locked On Grizzlies your first listen. And for your next listen, make sure you check out the Locked On Now podcast. And so Locked On Now podcast will be recapping every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. And you can find it anywhere and everywhere you get your local podcast. So before we go here and find out on the next Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about, we're going to recap this game. We're going to talk about the update on Ja Morant. And coming up, the Grizzlies have the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, coming to town. He'll be in Memphis. The Bucks will be in Memphis. And one little tidbit, well, we're going to talk more about it, but one little tidbit. When I was out at All-Star Weekend and I was talking, to Giannis Antetokounmpo about the Grizzlies and about Ja Morant being a star player, and I asked him, for his thoughts, because he is the model now for star player staying in a small market and winning a championship. And he gave a very detailed answer. We're going to talk more about it tomorrow, but he basically said Ja Morant can win a title in Memphis. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. But before you go, thank you for listening to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you checked out the Locked On NBA podcast too. That's where the experts will break down everything that's going on in the NBA, and you get it all in 30 minutes. So they're going to talk about, Ja Morant. They're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to talk about the Boston Celtics being one of the hottest teams in the NBA. They're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns, who keep on winning despite missing Chris Paul and Cam Johnson. And they're going to talk about, the Denver Nuggets, who could be getting some real good players back really soon. But a lot is going on in NBA. But Locked On NBA is your place to get all of it, and you can get it in less than 30 minutes. So just sit back, drink some coffee, or during your commute to or from work or wherever you go. 30 minutes is all it takes to listen to Locked On NBA. Also available wherever you get your podcast. But that'll wrap up today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you come back tomorrow. It's going to be really good. But we thank you for listening to Locked On Grizzlies.